Hello, everyone. I'm your host, James Warner. Welcome to another episode of the Savage Wrestling Podcast. This is a special edition episode. I'm going to interview a special person today, and his name is Evil Dose. Say hello, Evil Dose.
Hello, I am special. I was really excited listening to that spa music. I thought I was going to get a massage or something.
It's the music that comes with this app, I guess.
That's a beautiful thing. Very relaxing. So what's up?
Oh, we're going to go through, I got some things we could talk about, even though this show just came out of the blue, so just bear with me. So, oh my God. My Apple work. There it goes. We could talk about right now. We could talk about the Switchblade thing real quick.
Sure. We sure can. I mean, Switchblade deserves credit for his own work, but yeah, we can absolutely talk about it.
Let me hide this real quick, and I'll go find it real quick. So,
do you want me to give the background to like how this all?
Yeah.
Okay, so sometime last night, Dave Meltzer put out something which he called a leaked internal Warner Brothers Discovery memo, and it was a breakdown of advertising rates for the various AEW shows. It incorporated pay-per-view model pricing. It included Ring of Honor. It made mention of True TV, which led you to the conclusion that that's where Ring of Honor might land. It came up with the conclusion that AEW is worth around $290-something million per year to AEW. It talked about revenue. Now, just looking at it, it didn't pass the smell test. One, the numbers seem off, but even if you're not an industry person, and I'm not in advertising, but I have read internal memos before, and I've read internal memos and seen internal statements by companies on evaluating products and pitches. So, at first of all, I mean, just the most primitive smell test that it didn't pass was it talked about revenue. It never talked about costs nor profit. No internal memo for a company that's deciding what to pay a product doesn't talk about the profits it's made in its 5-year history. Also, the projections were ridiculous. It was giving like 2 to 2.5% of the carriage fees to the networks as a result of AEW, which mathematically, percentage-wise, doesn't even make sense. There's 96 TV hours in 5 days. There's 7 days in a week. It's one show is on for 1 hour. The other two shows are on for 2 hours. The Ring of Honor, unless it was going to be a 4-hour show, is 2 hours. So percentage-wise doesn't make sense. But it wasn't incorporating the reduction in carriage fees due to loss of the NBA. It wasn't projecting forward with loss of viewership. It also falsely, and this part put an asterisk next to, because my information comes from a Fox-produced UFL podcast. And in a Fox-produced UFL podcast, they reported that SmackDown, for a 30-second ad, was getting $36,000 per. And the reason they talked about that was just because they were contrasting with the UFL, which was getting about $4,500 for 30-second spots. And this was important because the UFL was going to be moving to Fox's Friday night lineup in place of SmackDown for 12 weeks out of the year, or at least 10. So that was the context. So I have no reason to think that Fox got their numbers wrong. Maybe it was one season behind or whatever, but still, you don't go from 36,000 to 51,000, overnight. And it said $27,000 for Dynamite, which cable is usually around half of what broadcast is. So anyway, it just didn't pass the smell test. Now, I'm in a little chat group with a few people, and people can probably riddle out who some of them are, and they probably would get some of it wrong. But some of those guys are money guys. They come from Wall Street and finance backgrounds. much smarter on this stuff and breakdown and analysis than I am. I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 31 years. So I see finances, but just like everyone else, I have experts lay them down for me. But I know contract, I know business law, I know what makes sense in the world, I know what doesn't make sense in the world. None of this made sense. Anyway, so Switchblade, I'm going to give him credit. His Twitter account is at Switchblade, and not just that's the only way I know how to identify him. I don't even know his real name. I'm not sure he knows my real name. Is to so that you can look it up for yourself, and also because he's not an AEW hater. Switchblade has been his account as long as I've known him, and it's an honor to Jay White. He's a Jay White fan, and before he was in AEW, and before Jay White was booked pretty badly, by according to most AEW fans. Anyway, so you can just take that bias part out of there, I suppose. Anyway, in the interim, while we were dissecting it and realizing it was garbage internally, I got a message from another person saying that's absolute garbage. That's not what it is. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so either. He's like, no, I know it's not. I said, can you provide me proof? He's like, no, I can't. I'm like, okay, great. And then it turned out that the Bixen span tweeted something like, oh, Dave, what did you do? And it turned out that Dave was thinking, and you have it up on the screen, he was posting something that a fan in, I think it was the Fightful Discord fan thread posted, saying that they were in the advertising business and saying that this was something that they had come across, which, forget about what you think about the numbers on the chart by itself. Dave was claiming this on his own. He added about $10 million a year to it, or I think like $11 million a year to it, and claimed it was a leaked internal Warner Brothers Discovery memo. I mean, it's plagiarism of unsourced materials. He transformed it a little bit and reframed it as something that it wasn't. Now, I was waiting for like days, if not weeks, of agonizing nightmare trying to explain to people there's no way this is real, when they would never believe me that the holy prophet Dave Meltzer says it is real. But it came out so quickly that it wasn't, that even Dave retracted it. He didn't apologize. He just said, okay, I'm going to take it down now. Something like that. I don't know exactly what he said because he blocked me some months ago. And this is shameful. And I'm sure that there's still, AW devouts who think that it's accurate and think that, that AW is worth $300 million a year to this network and all of this stuff. And, this is just more smoke and delay. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the purpose of this was. I don't know if Tony said to Dave, lay down some cover free buy me some time, or if they just did this on his own, or I don't know what the motivation is, but I'm glad that the truth came out really quickly. And maybe some people who aren't on the we hate AEW side, we love AEW, will look at this and go, maybe we shouldn't believe everything that he says as gospel, because basically when he says something, a whole lot of other people run with it, and then it becomes its own self-perpetuating confirmation.
Right. So everyone basically just shitted on this, saying, oh, it's fake and all that stuff. And to me, when I saw this, I went, there's no way this was real. Right. So luckily I got you on here and helped me just go through this and all that stuff, because I was like, this has to be full of shit, because I'm thinking there's no way they're doing this much and all that, which I don't know how much they make each episode or whatever they do. I'm just blowing smoke on my ass.
But, and even if you believe that the underlying author was using real numbers, it internally it doesn't make sense. I mean, little things like it valued the carriage rates and other items for Collision more than Dynamite, which is just not the case. Dynamite, whatever they're doing, they are the A show. They are the most successful product on AEW television. I mean, and there were other things too, but just like little things that don't even make sense internally. So even if you thought, okay, these are real numbers and somebody's making a sales pitch, it got to Warner Bros. Discovery, and yeah, they circulated around. So technically, Dave was not lying. This is an internal memo. They didn't create it themselves, but it's it's internal. We call it a memo schmemo. No, it's fan fiction.
Oh, now these days I can't believe in Dave Meltzer anymore, but
You shouldn't. No, but the sad thing is nobody should. I mean, look, AEW disciplinary committee wrote an open letter to Dave. Dave won't see it from him because he's blocked also, but it was
Mhm.
very long. It was very thoughtful. I commend everybody to read it because I think it is a very fair appraisal of Dave's place in history, which is significant, and where he is now, which is not good.
well, thank you for going over that with me. On another note, if they're gonna keep, if let's just say if they do make that, is that a good success? If they did make that kind of money on each show every week,
If you made $300 million a year from these 5 hours of television, and throwing battle belts, yeah, that would be.
okay,
I mean, if that's 300 million profit, yeah. I mean, or if even half of that was profit, yeah. That would be good for. I mean, listen, Warner Bros. Discovery is they just marked down their net worth by $9.1 billion. They took a one-time loss of
Mhm.
of half of their market value because they said what we've been valuing as X isn't it's worth half. It's worth X divided by 2, and then they lost another $900 million this year on top of that. So they had $900 million in actual losses, and their goodwill or other intangibles or valuations. They so basically their market cap value went from 18.7 billion to like 9.7 billion or something overnight. I mean, they've been downgraded to a negative credit rating by Wall Street bankers.
All right, all right, all right. On a
So yeah, anything
yeah,
that where they're making profits and a significant profit is a good thing for them. Is my point. I mean, they need 10 more Barbieheimers, but and meaning $2 billion movies. But yeah, if yeah, they would not get rid of a show that or a product for 5 hours a week that made them $300 million a year. If that was even 50% profit.
all right. Moving on. Um, I'm gonna pick a bone with AEW here. Me and my co-host Aaron, which he's not here tonight, guys. He's at work. You will see him next Friday. Um, Me and him, we talk about ratings. Okay. I like me and him. We didn't really argue about it. It's just my solution is for their ratings, right? Is that the way if I was running a promotion and all that stuff is the way they have it set up. Like they need to light it up, small venues. You know what I'm saying? Dave Meltzer keeps bringing up the Big Bang Theory reruns,
Mm-hmm.
saying that it'll help him out and all that stuff. Which not really, but what he has here is the special shout out to unpaid critics saying Big Bang Theory reruns for sure. They fill up far more of the schedule with largely very good numbers. Big Bang Theory is the strongest rerun program on cable by a pretty wide margin. What did he mean by that?
Well, I mean, for one, they get incredible numbers. Two, I think that Warner Bros. Discovery is in their second term of licensing Big Bang Theory shows. I think the first 5 years was like 200 million a year. I think they're now down to 120 or 160, something like that. And it still does like 1.1 million an episode. And they run the Big Bang Theory multiple times a day. I mean, from 7 to 8 is the Big Bang Theory every night of the week. But I think they also run it through daytime hours, and sometimes they do marathons. I'm sure they run it a little bit through the overnight hours as well. So it's probably 6 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's a great investment with the numbers and with the demo. And it's a terrific lead-in for AEW. Now that cuts both ways. I mean, AEW gets the lead in, but the network isn't stupid. They also see that they're losing, I mean, I think this past week they lost something like 110 or 130,000 people between 8:01 and 8:15, and then another 40,000 by the time you got to 8:31. So, I mean, so yeah, they get the benefit of it, but they also lose it as well. And then at the end, if they pick up, how much of that is for AEW for its overrun, or how much of that people, planning to tune into Modern Family or Young Sheldon or whatever they run now there in that time slot.
All right, if I'm going to give you a great question. If you were run AEW, how could you help them fix their ratings?
You'd have to go. I mean, you'd have to do almost a complete reset. I mean, I believe 100% that AEW could have been cash flow positive in year one and profitable by year two, and that means recoupment of its initial investment, which was, I believe, $100 million between Tony Khan, his father, and I'm not even sure who else. And to my knowledge, they have still not recouped that initial investment, and they've never been cash flow positive, and they're operating in the red significantly. Whether it's tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars seems to be the only distinction within the reasonable mind. I mean, one, you have to take the pencil away from Tony Khan, which seems impossible, but 2 years ago it seemed impossible that you'd ever take the pencil away from Vince McMahon. So I mean, so that you'd have to do that, and then you'd have to find an identity. I mean, you'd have to book it like a TV show, and eliminate a lot of these senseless matches, and book champions like champions, unless they're supposed to be struggling. Have more stories. I mean, you don't have to be WWE light, but wrestling is a simple formula. You had like this great goodwill from an audience that wanted to love everything you did, that wanted to root for Marco Stunt, for God's sake. So, I mean, I would build around probably like their spring 2020 or 2020 roster. Probably, you'd have to do roster cuts. I mean, you'd have to do I'd end all this Ring of Honor nonsense. But you'd have to start over. You'd have to let the writers start writing. I mean, I don't know, a year or so ago, it's probably about a year and a half ago, I was on a different network and said, if you had to, ironically, about 18 months ago, I did two podcasts on the PWC network. They were both called Outside Interference. One was things the WWE need to do better. One was things AEW needed to do better. And number one for WWE was like the impossible get rid of Vince McMahon. Well, that happened. And if anyone can find those shows, a lot of the things that I said in that episode for WWE has done, and they're doing much better. I mean, objectively speaking, on every metric. AEW's done none of the things I said in there. So I think I gave them like a baker's dozen and a 14th for free point. So it's like, I always like to say, yeah, I like to complain and point out problems, but I also like to offer solutions too. And those were my love letters to both promotions with, for what it's worth. Listen, I know there's people that are saying, who are you? You're a nobody. You're absolutely right. I mean, they're just, but my criticisms are from the same nobody. So my suggestions are from the same nobody. So, that's all I can do is offer things from my brain. And I've been watching wrestling since the 70s. And I'm an older man. I'm 55 years old. I'm turned 56 in 3 months. I started watching. Afa and Sika weren't even the tag team champions yet. I think it was still Saito and Fuji when I started. And we just lost both of Afa and Sika within the last 2.5 months.
Yep.
So yeah, it would have to be a complete reset. But I hate to tell people to listen to a different podcast, but that's the most succinct thing I can tell you to do. But basically a complete reset. But it doesn't matter. This is Tony's vanity project. You know what? I wouldn't even be so upset with AEW if Tony just said, you know what, this isn't a regular business. Do I want to lose my shirt? No. But as long as I make some of my money back or 50% of my money back, perfectly happy. This is my passion. This is my vanity project. This is my racehorse. This is my stable of racehorses. One of them's going to win. Most of them aren't going to win, but I love them all. And then I'm going to stud them out later on. and maybe I'll make my money on the back end. But if not, I'm having a great time going to all of the royal cotillions in all the great cities and towns, and I get to wear funny hats and great clothes and drink fabulous drinks, all summer long, and it's always somewhere. That'd be fine. Just say, I'm having fun. This is my thing. It's the people say this is a viable, successful business model that drive me crazy, because it's not. The gatekeepers drive me crazy, but every promotion has their gatekeepers. I'm not going to deny that. I was in NWA groups where they were arguing that NWA is the greatest thing of all time, and and like now NWA. I was in the Ring of Honor Facebook group until the end, having people like Bobby Cruz and Tony Deppen and Tony Deppen's father and Rhett Titus's wife yelling at me that I thought the Ring of Honor that this whole reimagination thing was bullshit and they were going out of business. Like, no, it's not. It's reimagined. No, it wasn't. It was bullshit. And there were still fans going, "You were a hater. You're a jerk." I'm like, "Did they go out of business?" Yes. Somebody go, "No, they're still in business." I'm like, it's not our Ring of Honor, is it? And but anyway, the point is every fan has their gatekeepers and they're rabid fans. Fan is for fanatic, right? But also I like when I go on different shows and different people hear me, because I think when you hear me speak rather than you read what I type, it's very different.
And I'm going to also bring this up. And do you also think Tony Khan giving wrestlers creative control is making AEW as bad as it gets? If you think.
I think so. That's one of the things that killed WCW. There's lots of suspects. It's like Clue. Well, it's more like Murder on the Orient Express, where they all killed them. But yeah, that was one of the big ones. The same thing happened in TNA, and it's happening now. And it's obvious who has creative control. Jericho has creative control. He's booking himself. The Bucks, clearly. Mercedes Moné. And I'm not someone who hated Sasha Banks. I like Sasha Banks. I thought Sasha Banks was great.
I love Sasha Banks. I really did, till she came in the AEW.
Yeah, I didn't believe that she was lying down, kicking and screaming on. I didn't think any adult acted that way. I'm sure there were arguments and things like that. Now I believe it all. And it's and she was being protected from herself. Now, even outside of WD, her New Japan Strong and New Japan stuff was terrible. She was injured most of that time, almost immediately. But her singing and whatever. But anyway, that's not important. It's the power shifts. Britt Baker had all the power for a while. Now she doesn't. It's sort of crazy town over there. And there are people who have jobs that I forget how jobs, apparently Griff Garrison is still there. Who knew?
I never knew that. Okay. Dave Meltzer, I got another thing for Dave Meltzer. He we'll just say he re-quoted something from Jonathan O'Reilly saying that, I don't have it brought up. Rookie mistake. Here we go. Saying that, so your WBD, do you overpay for AEW if they have no other offers, or give them a nice increase but nothing too dramatic? How much do they think to get it now? Then Dave Meltzer said, we don't have that outside offers. It's hard to believe there would be no outside offers, but as far as a dollar figure, we heard nothing publicly. Khan has never talked about anyone but WBD, and even said that he stayed for slightly less money. I wouldn't come any conclusion until the deal is done. My goodness, I'm sorry for the stroke. What do you think Dave is saying there?
I think maybe we just figured out the motivation for why he did that false leak. Maybe he thinks that other networks are actually paying attention to him in the wrestling media, and he's trying to get people to make offers. He knows there are no other offers, because the person who would know about other offers is him, because Tony talks directly to him, and the Young Bucks talk directly to him, and Chris Jericho talks directly to him, and Kenny Omega used to talk directly to him, maybe still does. So if anybody would know there are other offers, he would know. And believe me, if there were other offers, Tony Khan would be standing on the highest mountain, letting you know there were other offers, so the WBD know. By the way, the networks know anyway. They're not keeping this secret. They might not reveal each other's offers, but they'll say, hey, I made an offer to your show or whatever. So he would know. But since there's no other offers, why would you offer a lot of money? Why would you offer anything other than the market value? And how many channels or networks or conglomerates have a platform where they're in about 65 to 70 million homes in America that have 5 live primetime hours per week available now for this year, as of January 1st, 2025? My guess to that answer is none. I mean, maybe like streaming services like Apple or Amazon would, but that's not 60 or 70 million homes. That's a lot less. I think Apple is like, 18 million homes, something like that. And how many of those people watch wrestling? Probably not very many. Amazon, I'm not sure, but it's nowhere. I mean, none of those streaming services are any. The only streaming service that's bigger is Netflix, and neither Amazon or Apple are top 2. I think Apple is like sort of like a distant last. Amazon might be up there, but most conventional wisdom is that most of the people who have Amazon just have Amazon Prime. They're not really using the TV or the streaming. Anyway, point being, that might be why he leaked that thing, or air quote leaked it, to see if he can spur that on to help things out. But it's August 18th. I mean, the upfronts were back. What were they? Mid-May, early June. AEW had no presence there. I mean, that's when you sell your programming to advertisers. Now, it's not as fatal for AEW as it might be for a new show, because there's a 5-year history, and advertisers, I mean, despite what people like to think, advertisers aren't really looking for a show like AEW. That's been proven. They just buy time in blocks. They buy ads in blocks. They get 3 primetime slots, 2 noon slots, 2 drive time slots, and 4 overnight slots in a package. Miscellaneous in a package. That's what most of these blocks are. That's why when Domino's complained about Nick Gage, then they get taken off of AEW. But Warner Bros. Discovery doesn't lose the Domino's money. They just put it on a different show. But Domino's never asked to be with AEW before. The ones that asked to be with AEW are the in-show sponsors. DraftKings was for a while. The sponsors were in the beginning, when people made fun of them for having Cracker Barrel. Don't make fun of them. That's a sponsor. That's great. That's what they want. That's what you should have wanted. But fans didn't know any better. They just thought it was stupid. They're like, Cracker Barrel, that's hee-haw. A, Cracker Barrel is delicious. Secondly, you want the sponsors. I mean, that's how you make money. And that's additional ad revenue. That's the ad revenue that comes directly for the show and is driven by the show versus these block ads. Now, I'm not saying there's not a single advertiser out there that doesn't say, I want to be on the live wrestling show or on a live show. I just don't. There's just not. That's your 96% of the advertisers is just buying in blocks for these primetime cable shows.
All right. Let's just move on. Thank you for going over with the whole thing with us. Well, just me. Aaron would love to be on this show, but he couldn't make it. But I also have something. Me and Aaron talked about this on our last show last Saturday about Tony Khan. Oh my! He was on. I can't remember who's the guy's name. Dave LeBaron's show. I'm sorry if I butchered
Dan LeBatard.
Yeah, okay. He mentioned about WWE tampering AEW contracts. Him saying, I don't think that it's still happening. I will reserve all my rights when it comes to that, but I don't think that is. But I'll leave it as at all that. What's your initial thoughts on that?
Whenever he has nothing else to do, he blames a boogeyman, and that boogeyman is usually WWE, bad faith podcasters, bots. He has independent surveys about this. He pulls this out of his bag of tricks all the time. Meanwhile, I mean, you know, Jeff Hardy, you know, walked out through the crowd in WWE and showed up on AEW, you know, day 91. You know, Edge Adam Copeland showed up there with a contract day 91, you know, after his non-compete, which, by the way, the non-compete, he's still under contract. I mean, you know, what people don't realize about the non-compete period is that the company can opt to recontract and say, you know, we revoke the release. That's why we changed our mind. So, you know, that's part of the distinction between when people say release and non-renewed. I mean, there are some substantial differences there. So they can withdraw a release and then re-invoke the contract unilaterally. I mean, it's one of the reasons I think these contracts are misclassified as independent contractor agreements, period. But that's a argument for a different day, and an argument that's been lost multiple times, mostly because nobody wants to press it. But I mean, Tony Khan's engaged in what appears to be contract tampering far more than I see WWE doing it. And if WWE's doing it, and there are lots of people out there say there's no such thing as contract tampering because they're not in a collective bargaining agreement. I'm not even sure that they're correct about that, but technically they might be. But I mean, certain things are terms of art. People say slander and they mean defamation or they mean libel. You know, by contract tampering, maybe the technical thing we tortious interference with contract or interference with business relations, depending on which state you're in. So it's not technically contract tampering, but you know, I'm sure there are slings and arrows going in all directions here, if it applies at all. It really is something I should look into, and I am a lawyer, so I should look into it, but I never have because it just seems patently silly to me, and he's said it so many times that it's like his major announcements. It's like the boy crying wolf. So, I mean, who even pays attention?
Do you think the reason he probably said that is because, like, let's just say, like, Ethan Page, now what I've been hearing, that both probably the Lucha Brothers might go to WWE. Same thing with, they thought they had Motor City Machine Guns, and I guess they almost had a deal, but they decided to go to WWE. Do you think that's what caused him to say that?
I have no idea what causes him to say anything. Might that be? Yeah, it might be. But I mean, the Motor City Machine Guns were never under contract with AEW, and it doesn't seem like they're under contract with WWE. And by the way, for the record, I don't want the Motor City Machine Guns in WWE. They're old and they're small. Two things I'm not interested in. They're a very important team. They're very influential for today's style of tag team wrestling. And while a lot of you kids like that, I don't. I like the Road Warriors. I like the Russians. I like Demolition. So I like the Heart Foundation. You know, I like Dr. Death and Terry Gordy. I'm not interested in. I'd rather see the Warlord and the Barbarian all day long rather than see the Motor City Machine Guns. So I don't want to see them. And Penta, I would love to see the Penta that was in Lucha Underground and Impact. But I have no desire for his balsa wood brother that's constantly broken and doesn't know how to work. So he can keep the flippy brother all he wants. So Ray Phoenix, I loved you as Dark Phoenix season 4 of Lucha Underground, but that's about it. And you know, go around flip. They've tried to replace you 6 times already, and maybe now they've succeeded with hologram. So anyway, maybe, I don't know, but he wants all the toys, but he doesn't use all the toys. Nobody can use all the toys, even with 2 promotions. So I don't know. I've always thought that Tony's maybe secret plan B was that he would buy a signal from the FCC, which is a fancy way of saying he would buy a TV channel, and just make it a 24/7 wrestling channel. He just air all his stuff and maybe once again proclaim himself the savior of wrestling and just offer TV time for cheap rates to every promotion so they can all be friends again. New Japan, AAA, CMLL, GCW, you name it, NWA. Everyone gets an hour on TV. And he's the savior of wrestling once again, and he'll pretend that that's a viable business model and claim victory, and everyone will believe him. And guess what? I won't even care. I'll be like, great, terrific, excellent, wonderful.
All right. You know, I would not mind Penta going to WWE. I really want the Lucha Underground style Penta, and like you said, his impact. I love his impact in the Lucha Underground run. Let's just hope I'm not saying, well, I do want him to go to WWE, but where do you think where they put him in WWE if Penta does end up signing with WWE? You think
Well,
NXT
yeah,
or main roster?
no,
NXT? Okay.
yeah, no, there's all of those guys would go to NXT. I mean, the Motor City Machine Guns, I assume, would go to NXT to sort of, be player coaches, and Penta would need to learn how to work for TV and stop doing the Zero Miedo every 30 seconds. I mean, he's basically become Zero Miedo version of Orange Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
So he
Okay.
would learn how to go back. He'd have to be retrained to learn how to be the wrestler he was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, before sort of fame ruined him, or seeing what worked at that promotion ruined him. As I said, for Phoenix, I think it's too late, and I think he's too broken. And even though he's the younger brother, I think his body's older.
Okay. Also, there's been rumors that Ricky Stark might leave AEW to go WWE. What's your thoughts on that? I just read rumors. Don't shoot the messenger. I just wanted to hear your thoughts if you think Ricky Starks will go to WWE after what Tony Khan's been doing with him here lately.
Oh, I mean, I think Ricky Starks has made it plain that has no intentions of resigning. I think Wardlow's made it plain also, but Ricky Starks is particularly close with Cody. Wardlow looks like a WWE guy, though they already sort of have their own version of him in Karrion Kross, but Kross is 35 or 36, but actually Wardlow's the same age, so I guess I don't really see a difference. Anyway, yeah, I think Ricky Starks won. Him, I could see debuting on the main roster, just of course who he's friends with, but I don't know. I think everybody. I mean, first of all, there's no hard splits in WWE. You can exist on both. The Good Brothers are on both. Ridge Holland, and Pete Dunne are, both technically on both. You've got plenty of main roster people there. You've got Cedric and Shante, and Natty goes down there every now and then. Michin's been back and forth, so it's not a hard split. So I could see Ricky Starks debuting, at on the main roster, but going back to NXT. But I think he's much closer. He did the NWA thing, and he works more of a WWE style. He had a serious injury when he was younger, so I think he knows to protect his neck. And he's also very tight with Cody, and I think that doesn't count for everything, but I think it does count for a lot. I mean, it didn't get QT Marshall a job, but it did get Sean Spears a job. But they also, Sean Spears, I think, also knows where he is at this stage of his career now, and actually he's been doing a really great job in his role at NXT as being sort of an on-camera personality, but mostly a producer agent. But Starks, I mean, I sort of think that almost everybody starts at NXT, though. I mean, if Samoa Joe had to start with NXT, I mean, like AJ Styles and Jay Cargill were like the only ones, and AJ Styles was sort of an indie mid-major legend, and Samoa Joe, yeah, but not exactly. And he wasn't really the prototypical WWE style looking guy. They already had Kevin Owens. Jade looks like a superhero. I mean, there's Jordan Grace, but she's a foot shorter. Ivy Nile, she's a foot shorter. I mean, Camille is not nearly the physical specimen that the Jade Cargill is, and Camille is a fabulous specimen. That's not to knock Camille. It's just that Jade Cargill looks like, I mean, she looks like the She-Hulk, just not green. I mean, she's a Greek goddess, though. I mean, there's only one. So Ricky Starks is not. Like, I have concerns about Ricky. I think he's good. I think he's got a personality. I think he can move. I don't mean thin. He's really narrow. I mean, you can get thicker, but you can't get yourself less narrow. But I'm a sizist, so I don't know. But yeah, I think Ricky Starks is definitely going to be in WWE. I don't think that's really a secret or controversial. And let's just, you asked me a question, so let's say NXT.
Okay, so back to that question. So for Wardlow, you think NXT for him?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. He needs to be retrained. And by the way, he'd be a great person, if he can go back to when he clobbered MJF like 2 years ago before his career ended, meaning Wardlow. Like he'd be a great person to go over Obafemi when they want to bring Obafemi up to the main roster, because he's so believable in that. It's like, you have one Obafemi beat another Obafemi.
Okay. Kind of the same question for anyone in AEW with their contract expiring. Who you think might jump ships to WWE? My answer is probably Malachi Black might go back to WWE, but my buddy's like, no, that's not going to happen, and all that stuff. And I kept thinking, well, the way Malachi Black's been booked, him just being in trios, I'd rather see him as a single. No offense to Brody King and Buddy, but that's just my one. Who you think might jump to WWE if their contract expires today?
Well, that's a big if. Let me say this.
Big if.
I'm not a big fan of overstocked rosters, and I think the WWE is overstocked right now. There's a lot of people they don't know what to do with, and they're almost lucky when they get injuries just from a booking standpoint, not for those talents, of course, but I mean, there's 2 guys in the LWO that we never see. Actually, 3 if you count Dragon Lee. I mean, whatever happened to him? They just sent Cedric and Ashante. We just talked about a bunch of main roster people spending time in NXT. Some are for reasons, some are for retraining, some are just to keep them busy, but some are because they have nothing else to do with them. I mean, Apollo Crews and Baron Corbin are in a tag team, for what? So, I'm not really of the mind where you need to add a lot of people. I mean, you just debuted the Wyatt Six. You're going to continue to add to the bloodline. We know that the other Haku-san Hikuleo signed. There's been, we know that Rikishi's pushing for some of his other kids that are gigantic. We know that they have their eye on Umaga-san Zilla Fatu, as a project. So what are they going to do with all these folks? And they're graduating people from NXT, and we're not even talking about women. I mean, NXT has like 2 full rosters of women that are just great. And Charlotte's coming back, and Carmella might come back, and Alexa Bliss might come back, and Becky might come back, and Ronda Rousey's talking about coming back. I mean, so I don't know. We're already talking about overstock. Asuka's coming back. Dakota Kai is going to be out for 10 weeks. I don't think there's anything in Dakota Kai, but there are people. But she has her fans. There are people who love her.
Yes.
And that counts in this business. If they support her by buying merchandise and things like that, then that counts. I mean, Tegan Knox is still on the roster somehow. So I don't know. Kiana James is there, who's one of my favorites, but I mean, they don't have her doing anything. Mandy Rose could change her mind any day, and you think that they're gonna, bring in Britt Baker or the Butcher or the Blade over her. But okay, so I think Miro absolutely should come back. I would love to see Lana come back with or without Miro. Bobby Lashley is my favorite. He's my bromance. So, I think I would like to see him be brought back in, and destroy everyone. At some point, they're going to break glass and bring Brock Lesnar back in. I mean, so I don't know. But Miro, I think Malachi Black does want to come back. I do think he would probably push for bringing Brody King with him. Buddy Matthews just re-signed with AEW. Not exactly sure why, but so we'll take him out of the equation. Starks, Wardlow. I think Thunder Rosa absolutely wants to.
Yes.
And I do want better things for her. She's a really nice woman. She interacts on social media. She had to put her own promotion on hiatus. I know she put a lot of her heart and soul into that. And she was brought in as a big deal in AEW, and they treat her like a big deal for a very short period of time. But even then, there was always stuff going on, and and there's slings and arrows hurled both ways. But I think that she would do really well for herself in WWE, even as just part of an ensemble. But I think they already have too many people there. I mean, you see all the valets and managers, and I mean, Elektra Lopez is super cool. She's a valet. I mean.
I couldn't agree with you more. I like you just said over overstack. What way you said it, yeah, it is overstack. But I was just throwing it as a big what if like you said, if injuries happen, if something happens to this person or whatever, there'll be a good addition for them to come in and help out. But I agree
Hobbs,
with you.
Will Hobbs. I mean,
Oh my
like
God.
his potential. I mean, I know he's injured right now, or he was. I don't know if he's still injured. He's definitely someone I'd like to see come in. Um, I don't know. I, I can't get it out of my head how packed the rosters are, and add in that there's likely people like Joe Hendry and Jordan Grace are going to probably sign with WWE, and there's still that back and forth. I mean, going between TNA and their so unless there is this NXT type expansion where they're going to create promotions in Europe and Japan and Mexico, even if they're half and half with other promotions, and they do send, whatever, 25 people down there to each of those promotions all the time. I don't know where they're going to fit all these folks. I just don't know. I mean, we have Julia, Stephanie Vaquer, and Delta all coming in. Come on. I mean, it's that there's not enough wrestling hours, and nobody needs more wrestling. I mean, AEW, I think, unintentionally killed, the mid majors. They killed their partners, not just because they took all their best talent, but because why do people need to watch New Japan if they can see the same style of wrestling and some of the same wrestlers and now the stars of that promotion right here on cable here and in their own town and get a good seat for free?
Yep. I'm going to go back what you just said about NXT. Do you think it will be a good idea for them to expand, like you said, Europe, Japan, Mexico? Well, let's just throw in like Canada or whatever. You think that will help them out?
Well, I mean, any place that gives wrestlers a place to work, that part of it's good as a business model. I think with Netflix, yes, because they're going to be in more households in those places. And so it would make sense. And because, I mean, the number from Netflix is enormous, but if you actually break it down, it isn't, they didn't really get a big raise. So, and while merch sales may go up being in more households, you also need those big house shows, and you can't just have one bash in Berlin and, one tour every 2 years of Europe. So, yeah, I think that, and more TV time, that, another 3 hours that you can sell to CW or sell to 3 different networks. Maybe Amazon does say, hey, we want to get in the wrestling game, and we ship a ton of stuff to Europe. So yeah, we'll buy NXT Europe from you live, and we'll give you, I don't know, whatever. The same thing CW gave, right? $36 million a year. Sure. Then if you can make it pay for itself or be a profit margin, sure, absolutely. Why not? WWE is all about branding. They're getting sponsors, and you get Volkswagen and Heineken sponsors instead of Budweiser and Progressive, or Wingstop and Progressive.
All right. Moving on. I got to bring up another AEW drama or news, whatever. People are concerns rise that Young Bucks' presence may harm AEW. Do you think that's the problem?
It's a problem, and it was a problem from day one. And So, listen, I'll say the same thing about the Young Bucks I said about the Motor City Machine Guns. Extremely influential, perhaps the most important tag team from 2010 forward, as far as influence is concerned. Whatever comes with that, there would be no AEW without the Young Bucks. But they're also completely self-absorbed douche canoes, and they're terrible at booking, and they're constantly at odds with other people, even with Tony Khan. They book themselves as champions and then go to part-time contracts. I mean, they ruin everything. This whole elite thing, that it's been, it's been a whole disaster. I mean, Okada, who people blathered to me for 8 years was the best wrestler in the world, comes here. Nobody gives 2 shits about Okada.
Except for him just saying the word bitch every episode they do.
Oh, I would know. I've been AEW free for 17 weeks. I haven't. I don't know exactly when I stopped watching it. I think this week, this Wednesday, would be my 17th not watching Dynamite. But like whenever I haven't seen anything from MJF's return. So I stopped before MJF came back.
Now, okay, MJF now has a gimmick that he's all American now. He changed the international title to the American title or something like that. It is the most cringiest gimmick I ever seen. It's basically like a Trump supporter gimmick,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so cringy.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, at least he's trying. I mean, the thing about MJF is he's like really interesting for a year, and then it's the reruns, and then he gets edgier, and then he goes too far. So at least he's trying something. I mean, if you're a heel, you should be like a MAGA supporter. The problem is that half of the wrestling fans are MAGA supporters too, so they're not going to like it.
That's true. Also, I'm going to bring this up. What is your thoughts of AEW having their All In at Global Life Park at Texas, I think, next year?
It's smarter than Wembley. I don't know. I don't know what about them thinks that they can do a stadium show in the United States. They're having trouble selling 2,000 or 3,000 tickets to Dynamites. I think they sold like 3,600 tickets to Grand Slam this year. I mean, only very major pay-per-views are they even coming close to selling out buildings. I mean, it took Sting's retirement to Greensboro to sell, I think, 16,000 tickets? I mean, that's like regular SmackDown and Raw numbers. So I don't know, like All In isn't WrestleMania, and just the very nature of a stadium show, it isn't going to draw flies to light. It's Central Texas during the All-Star break. It's going to be like 110 degrees. I don't think that ballpark has a dome. I could be wrong about that. I don't know if they're going to use the AC. I mean, it's not even Dallas. It's Arlington, which I understand is like a commuter city from Dallas. It's probably like 40. I've been to both, and you fly into Dallas to go to Arlington. I don't know. I did, they did the residency in Arlington in that sort of that, I guess it's like the equivalent of the Daly's Place kind of setup. And I think they only sold the place out once, which was like around 2,300 tickets, 2,400 tickets. A couple times they did like 900. I think this past week they sold they released 1,380 tickets and distributed all 1,380, which distributed and sold isn't the same thing. But anyway, forget it. Let's assume they sold it all for top dollar. That's still struggling to get 1,400 people in Arlington. You go into the same city. I mean, sure, they're getting some incentives and subsidies and whatever, but it's not like they're getting like a $3 million site fee. They're not in the building for free like WWE does. They don't have that kind of proving drawing power. If anything, they impeach themselves. And I don't know what about their experience in Arlington led them to believe that this is a great idea, but it's better than trying to do Cowboy Stadium. I mean, I admire them for trying, but I just remind everyone that a company can go out of business and fold on all their contracts. It happens every single day because they're called limited liability companies for a reason, because the human beings involved don't have personal liability. So when the company has no assets, there's nothing to collect from. So you can make all these promises to Australia and whatever, and you can still fall, but whatever. So I'm not even sure if it'll happen. Let's get through this particular All-In and let's see, of the close to 50,000 tickets that are distributed, if there's a turnstile count that's off by 10% again, and if the eye test does confirms that turnstile count. I mean, it's the product. They sold 39.5 of those tickets during the pre-sale. That's what was released during the pre-sale. They sold those quickly. I'm not sure how many of those were legitimately sold, because I only know one person who told me he bought tickets, and the first time around, I knew dozens and saw scores of others. I always think that Tony buys like half the tickets the first day. So
on that, it is a retractable roof that the Ranger Stadium. It is a retractable roof.
Well, let's hope they plan on closing, because they're going to need air conditioning.
Yeah, Texas could be really brutal with their weather in the summer.
Yeah.
On other news, WWE. What's your thoughts on WWE having a WrestleMania in London? If that is true, I think it's. I think I read that right.
I think that it's. I think it's like 90%. I was sure that it was close to a deal done when they had John Cena go out and at another WrestleMania and basically tell London, sign us up. So I think they're just negotiating over details. But yeah, I think that there's a reason why they announced 2 WrestleMania sites and not the year in between, because I think it's going to be in London and in Wembley. But I think they're not going to announce it until whatever happens at All In. And if All In somehow miraculously is a giant success and they ending up with like 66,000 people there, and it looks like they're all there, and there's nothing to make fun of, they'll wait a month or two, and then they'll control the news narrative again. If it's a debacle, they may announce it 3 days later, just to step on the toes, just to pull a nose hair out of Tony's nostril.
Do you okay? Then do you think it's a good move for them having a WrestleMania? Because I always wanted a WrestleMania in London. Do you think it will be a right move?
I don't know. I mean, it's a ballsy move. I think it is because, it's not that. I mean, it's actually quicker to get to London from some places on the East Coast than it is to LA or Las Vegas or Seattle. I do think it's a risk to take it out of the country, but London's a big city. The UK has a fair amount of people. Continental Europe is right there. So, the EU has 400 million people in it. So if All In could get, I'll just go with the turnstile count, 72,000 and change. I'm pretty sure WrestleMania can do that. And if people are going to go once, they're going to go to 2 tickets. So yeah, I think it'll work out, but I wouldn't be going overseas. I mean, whenever you're creating friction, and a passport is friction, international travel is expensive. So, that's an issue, but you are now drawing from 2 major markets around, and problem with England is that they're not part of the EU any longer. So I'm not sure if EU nations need a passport to get into the UK. I don't know that. So you have friction. That said, I mean, there's a tunnel, a commuter tunnel, where people drive between France and England every day. So, I mean, it's got to be expedited, at least for some places.
Okay.
It's risky. It's risky in its PR, but I think it'll work out for them once.
Back to WrestleMania. I give me your thoughts on why we're not going to have a WrestleMania in Minnesota. I never understood what happened. But give me your thoughts on what happened there. Did they not get the deal done, or is that why they're having a SummerSlam there for 2 nights? What's going on there?
I'm the same reason I scoff at why do you have All In Arlington, Texas? Why would you have a WrestleMania in Minnesota? I mean, Minneapolis is a perfectly nice city, but it's not a destination. I mean, WrestleMania is supposed to be a family destination area or a party destination. Minneapolis is neither of those things. And by the way, that time of year, it can still be brutally cold in Minneapolis. Minneapolis is pretty far north. And Las Vegas is so much sexier. I mean, there's so much to do. It's a destination. People go there. You can go to Las Vegas for a weekend. You can go to Las Vegas for 2 weeks and never run out of things to do. I mean, so yeah, and they've got the UFC, the Apex is there, and there's so many facilities. There's so many events that they can have. There's so many probably co-sponsorship deals that they could have with various hotels and residencies. Like all of these chains are like owned by like all the hotels in Las Vegas are owned basically by 3 conglomerates. And so, WrestleMania, you get a 15% discount to see, I don't know, the Osmonds, Barry Manilow, Celine Dion, whoever is there, in the participating hotels. I don't understand why they ever really entertain Minneapolis. I mean, it always should be like Miami or LA or New York or Vegas, or if you're going to go Midwest, at least do Chicago.
All right.
I mean, I was wondering why SummerSlam was in Cleveland, for God's sake.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. because Aaron went to SummerSlam in Cleveland because we're both from Ohio, and he went on like a masculine rant. He had fun. It was just the crowd. Way he explained the crowd was mid on some matches, but when the CM Punk Drew McIntyre came out, it heated up. Then it died down again. But his problem was the parking, because he had to like drive, I think, like 4 more blocks to get to a parking spot, and he had to walk. I don't know what was the deal with them having it in Cleveland. I wish.
Yeah, I'm from Baltimore. I would never have a WrestleMania in Baltimore. I mean, that's nothing but Las Vegas. People, there's a 1,000 hotels to stay in. There's probably 10,000 Airbnbs, and there's monorails and car services, and there's underground passageways, with underground trains and above ground trains. To get from place to place, you don't have to drive and park. You don't have to worry about commuting. These facilities are attached to the hotel. If you stay in the same hotel, you don't have. I mean, they're enormous buildings, but you may not ever even have to go outside, which is a wonderful thing. So I mean, listen. Cleveland's not a sexy city. Baltimore's not a sexy city. They're perfectly fine for Raws and Smackdowns and things like that. Would I be mad if they did a SummerSlam at M&T, the Ravens Stadium? No, but it'd be the same thing. Parking and transit would be a giant pain in the ass. Going to the bathroom, a giant pain in the ass. I-95 and 395 would be backed up. It would be a nightmare. So there are cities that are built for big events, and there are cities that are not built for big events. And most of the East Coast cities and the old, industrial cities are not built for big events. They were built for factories and trucks going to ports.
Yeah, because he also brought up like they had shit merchandise at SummerSlam. They didn't have a whole lot. He said the bathrooms was horrible. Blah blah blah. Like you're right. Like some towns are not made for big events and all that stuff. Like you said, Vegas, Los Angeles, Texas, Chicago, and all that stuff. I don't know why. I don't know why Cleveland. I always thought that fucking stadium was not really good. Paul Brown, not Paul Brown. Jesus Christ, the Cleveland Brown Stadium. I think it's not a pretty stadium. I'm sorry, people from Cleveland. I'm sorry. Even though I'm from Ohio, that stadium's trash. But we're gonna move on. I'm gonna. You did mention about Alpha. I think I said his name right. Alpha. He did pass away, but we're gonna bring up what Dave Meltzer did. His little mishap. Saying that Alpha, I think it's from his daughter or whatever, saying that he's still battling. He might get through this, but then I think the same day he passed away. But Dave Meltzer ended up tweeting a correction. Alpha has not passed away. He's battling. Then later on, he said that he just passed away. Sorry for sending things on. What's your thoughts on that? I just thought that was the most shittiest move he did.
It is shitty. I mean, and what it shows, I mean, it's a desperation move. I mean, this is what a rookie does. This is either a young person's mistake who's desperate to make an impression, or somebody who's desperate. And he did it again the next day. I would argue that the plagiarism of a false document mischaracterizing is even worse than this, because he must have known that Alpha was in hospice, and he was, I guess he was assuming it's going to be any minute, so I'm going to be first, and people may argue time of death, but no one will really, know the difference between 20 minutes, but it ended up being close to 20 hours. It's still disgusting. I mean, it's still terrible. I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm just, either way, it's juvenile stuff, and it's shoddy journalism. It's shoddy everything. It shows a lack of ethics. It shows a lack of professionalism. But here we are talking about him.
When I saw this, I'm like, okay, is he battling, or is he dead? Because one day he passed away, and then all of a sudden I'm getting tweets saying that he's still battling, and I'm like, which one is it? And then I realized it was Dave Meltzer. I'm like, okay, never mind then.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a shame, but he shot a shot early, which you're not supposed to do, obviously. Um, it speaks for itself.
I'm gonna. You didn't mention about NXT and TNA. How you think that crossover's doing?
I think it's doing okay. I mean, I still can't get TNA TV ratings, so obviously it's not helping the television product very much. But they have been selling out their tapings in bigger venues. So they've been going from whatever the Impact Zone is, from 1,000 seat buildings to 4,000 seat buildings. So from that perspective, there seems to be some credit to NXT. I think it's good for NXT. I mean, it's brought a little excitement. You have a little bit of new blood. You have some more seasoned wrestlers for the trainees to work with. They work different styles. Got some exposure and some validation, I think, for Jordan Grace, and whatever I think lingering doubts there were with, WWE brass, like, should we bring her in? She's not pretty enough. Maybe she looks too artificial. Is she too short? And I think she really impressed. She's very crisp with her moves. She knows where to be. And and she's a physical specimen. Joe Hendry, he's a weird wrestler. He's sort of almost like a Danhausen, Orange Cassidy sort of with the meme, but it works. I don't know if it'll work long term or forever, but he's been doing the same shtick. I remember him back in Ring of Honor doing the same thing, and it's like, who's this funny Scot? I thought he was Australian first, but then he's Scottish. And you just start clapping with the stupid song, and you see the smile, and you're like, this is funny. Whatever, it worked, And the critics are right. He's not good a wrestler. He's okay. He's mid. He's probably not as skilled a wrestler as say like a Trick Williams, who's been wrestling 2 years, but he's got something. He's got something. That's what wrestling is, show business. That's what AEW doesn't seem to get. They don't get the show business. They think it's they think the circus is all about the acrobats and all that. No, it's about the lions and the elephants. And who cares if the elephants do much or they piss on someone? People want to see the goddamn elephants.
Like you said, it's doing really well for TNA. I've been reading all over Twitter that they're selling out. They're having good pay-per-view buy rates. What I was reading.
The subscriptions. And they have their own TNA club, like an honor club or WD, and their subscriptions did go up. They broke a record. What that means and from what, and did they maintain it? I have no idea. But I mean, I know people are saying, "Oh, they're just sending them NXT talent." Well, for now, and of course, I mean, this is to help NXT, and and a little shot in the arm for TNA, and it's modest, but I mean, how did Kenny Omega and Christian help TNA? Not at all. They went from when Kenny first debuted, they did 233,000 viewers. By the time Kenny Omega left about a year later, they were down to 133,000 viewers. And by the time Christian was the second non-Impact champion in a row, they were down to like about 110,000 viewers. And now they're much lower than that. The Good Brothers spent more time on AEW television than on Impact television. And for people who aren't referenced, prior to Kenny's arrival, when the champions were Tessa Blanchard was the world's heavyweight champion, and Brian Cage, their average that year was about 175,000 viewers. So Kenny did give them a spike for the first couple weeks, and they did have their historic best under the current ownership pay-per-view buy rate, which turned out to be under 10,000. It was like 9,100 or something, which is good if you're normally doing 1,000, which is what they were doing. But it was a one-time thing. It happened exactly once. So there was no long-term gain. In fact, they ended up losing close to half their audience as a result, and losing a lot of their top talent. And the same thing happened to AAA. The same thing happened to New Japan. DDT lost to Takeshita, who's not particularly happy. And we'll see about CMLL. But here's the thing. I don't know that anyone's noticing it because people are willfully blind. But despite all the talk about free agents, this, that, and the other thing, AEW has not made a big signing since Okada. even the Buddy Matthews signing, which was announced rather recently, was from February. Their more recent signings have been Maximum Male Models to Ring of Honor, Tommy Billington, who came from MLW, so that means he was getting $17 an hour, which that's a bit of a joke, but I mean, that Tom Billington wasn't making a lot of money, isn't making a lot. These are not big signs. Leo Rush is on an appearance contract. They brought in Marco Stunt for like 3 shows. Their additions have been very modest. I don't think they're going to bring in Bobby Lashley. Maybe MVP, but I don't think they're going to pay Bobby Lashley. I don't, even if Rebecca Quinn wanted to go somewhere, which she doesn't, but even if she did, I don't think they have money for that anymore. I think he's sort of carefully and slowly and sneakily spending less money. I think that's part of the Arlington experiment with the residency. That's why they're not licensing Elton John's Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting anymore for Collision. There's these little caucus while more contracts are not being renewed. So yeah, I think there's some of that going on. And so I don't think there's going to be any more big splashes. He rented Ishii for the summer. Yeah, that's why he's on TV all the time, even though nobody wants to see him on TV.
You brought up a name, Rebecca Quinn. Everyone keeps saying she's going to AEW, and I keep telling the toxic AEW fans on Twitter she's not going to leave Seth Rollins because they had a kid. They got a kid together. There's no way they're going to separate and all that stuff. And Seth Rollins won't leave WWE because he's, to me, for both of them, I think they're WWE for life.
Well, he resigned.
Oh, did he? Wow. News to me.
He was some months ago. But she'll resign. I mean, she's not going. I mean, why would she go over there? Does she want to be in a political war with Mercedes?
No, God, no.
And Britt and whatever the hell else is going on there. And apparently Britt and Jamie Hayter have some heat. I don't know. I thought they were best friends. What is this about?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too. But back what I was saying about Becky Lynch, I think Becky's WWE for life. I think she's built for WWE. She's for the WWE audience and all that stuff. And I get so much hate on Twitter. That's why I'm barely on Twitter every day, because I get shit on every time.
Oh, well, I mean, you can mute and block. But yeah, no, I think that you're absolutely right. They've made her a star. I mean, she's going to take 6 months off and she'll probably be back at the Royal Rumble.
But what you just brought up, the Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker, I don't know what's going on with that whole situation. I don't know either. No one's been really talking about it. Only thing they've been talking about is between Britt Baker and MJF. There's been saying that Britt Baker called MJF's girlfriend, pardon my French, a stupid fucking bitch. Then after that, I guess there's been rumors, even saying that MJF went to the women's locker room and punched a wall. But MJF went on a podcast and said that's never happened. I don't know what's going on. What's your thoughts if you ever seen this?
I mean, I don't know anything about Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker. I saw it being circulated around. I'm not even sure who reported it, so I can't add anything to it. Yeah, I heard exactly what you heard with Alicia Toot and Britt Baker. And MJF says, you hear what they said. Does it pass the smell test? And yes, it 100% passes the smell test with that company. He absolutely could do whatever he wants and thinks that he's the king shit there. And guess what? He is. And could I see him punching a hole in the wall? Sure. I mean, it was probably, sheetrock. Not even sheetrock. What do you put it when you? Yeah, drywall. When you just repair like a hole, yeah, because it's a locker room. It's basically a bathroom. There's pipes in there. They're hollow walls. I mean, big deal. I mean, lots of people punch walls at AEW. Brody King broke his hand punching a wall at All In. After the Punk Luke Perry thing. Anyway. So can I believe it? Absolutely. But might it be complete fiction? Sure, it's AEW. I have no freaking idea. And I don't even blame the talent. I mean, I sort of blame Jericho because he should know better, but then again, he did learn from the best, Hulk Hogan et al., how to take care of himself. And at the end of the day, that's the only person you got to take care of is yourself. But I blame one person, Tony Khan. I mean, I saw there was a poll where people were blaming Will Washington. That's really convenient. I don't know Will Washington. I don't like Will Washington. I don't dislike Will Washington. I know he's Swerve's cousin. I know he was a correspondent or worked for Fightful. I don't care what it is. He's an employee. There's only one person with 100% control. How do you blame Will Washington? How do you blame Jeff Jarrett, Jerry Lynn, Madison Rain? How do you do Dean Malenko? Pick a name, Jeff Jarrett, Jimmy Jacobs, all the people that are back there. How do you blame any of them? You can't blame any of them. They're all absolutely innocent. RJ City, whatever. There's only one person who is responsible, and that's Tony Khan. And we've seen all sorts of chaos happen under his watch. It's nothing but chaos. So it all starts and ends with him. He's the alpha and the omega.
I'm also going to bring up, you did bring up the Jack Perry incident and all that stuff. I know it was a while back. Me and Aaron had our talk about it, but do you think that whole situation made Jack Perry a star? Because to me, I don't see what fucking Jack Perry's been doing.
I think the results have spoken for themselves. I think the funniest, the best thing that happened to Jack Perry was the picture with Drew McIntyre, and I think that only insiders got it. I think most people saw a giant wrestler posing with a kid.
All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna do our last topic here. With WWE, how you think WWE's doing right now, and if they're gonna do it. If they're doing so well, what do you think they're going to do down the road with like their bloodline storylines, what they're going to do with LA Knight, Cody Rhodes? Just what's your thoughts on how WWE's been booking here lately?
Well, I think Triple H's vision is pretty clear. I think it's been mostly good. The results speak for themselves. I know I've said that same phrase a bunch of times tonight, but it's true. They're doing pretty well with ratings. They're doing great with attendance for Raws and SmackDowns and routine house shows. They're getting site fees and they're getting big views and big attendances for major events, typically selling out large venues. Or even when they don't sell out, they'll still, even at Cleveland saying they'll sell 57,000 people, which, but it wasn't a sellout, but still a lot of people. My only problem with it at all is that it's a little bit overproduced for me. Like it's almost too obvious what the story is going to be. It's just the when, where, or how it's going to happen, or the when and how that's going to happen that you're waiting for. And they've been doing that well. But I think that, like everyone else has been saying for a while, there's going to be some form of a bloodline civil war, which will, eventually bring the Usos back together, probably with Sami Zayn. Whether or not The Rock is involved or not, I'm sure that's plan A, but I'm sure there are plan Bs. I don't know what's going to happen with Cody, but I assume that, after this program with Kevin Owens is up, Randy Orton will turn at some point because that seems to make sense, and that would be a big deal. They may tease that he's going to have a rematch with Roman, but that'll never quite happen. I'm not really sure. There's a whole bunch of things that they could do. I mean, Nick Aldis, they could bring Nick Aldis, dust him off, and he knows he's a wrestler. He still knows how, and him and Cody had like a 2-year feud over the NWA title where Cody won and Nick Aldis won it back. That was the first All In, was Nick Aldis and Cody Rhodes was, I think, the main event. So they could sort of do that. I think that would be sort of interesting. But I don't know. I mean, there is sort of a problem with a baby face champion. You sort of have to build these monster heels, like your Kamalas and your one-man gangs and your King Kong Bundys and your big boss mans that, people want to see it, but you still don't believe that they're actually going to win. So we'll see. Maybe they do, bring Ricky Starks in, straight to the main roster, and you think he's Cody's friend, but he actually betrays him. One of those, like the Wesley story with the Rascals. You left me alone. kind of thing. So I don't know. Whatever it is, though, I'm just going to enjoy the ride now. I think LA Knight, he just had his run. I think he's going to have a nice long title run. I mean, what that means is that 6 months, is it 10 months? I don't know. I'd love to see Santos get a title at some point. See, I don't mind hot potatoing. I don't mind if, like, they have a best of 7 and the title switches 6 times. People hate that, but I don't. As long as it's not abused. I don't know. There's lots of different ways to go. There's drafts, there's trades, there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, you can always try and throw in like a heel, like a Grayson Waller or Austin Theory if you're trying to build them up. I don't know. All sorts of things.
Also, let me keep this going for a little bit. There's been problems about people are complaining about Cody Rhodes' title run being like too baby facious, like you just said. Do you think he needs to go a little edgy with his title run? Maybe like a little peak of him turning heel, but that'll probably never happen because I did like Cody's heel run. I couldn't remember what it was. I think it was I couldn't remember. It was like Impact where he was a heel for a little bit, and I was like, I kind of like his heel run. He also did it in New Japan. Do you think they might turn him, or is it they're going to make him like John Cena?
No, I think that they plan on turning him, but I don't think they plan on turning him for like next SummerSlam or 2 WrestleManias from now. At some point in the future, I could be wrong, or maybe he would be John Cena. Maybe he'll be the forever babyface. But anyone complaining about him being too babyfacey, that's exactly what he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be corporate Cody. He's basically playing the role as the on-camera Triple H, except Triple H keeps putting himself on camera. But what he wanted to do, he's doing exactly what he wanted to do in AEW, except in AEW he actually had responsibilities without authority. Here he has no responsibilities, no authority, but he can pretend he does. So he gets to dress the part and look the part and say the part. He's a top merch seller. People cheer when they do songs. He signs everyone's autographs. The kids love him. People who are complaining about stuff like that, they just like to complain. I feel you people, respect. I love to complain. I'm not happy unless I'm unhappy. But he's doing fine. His run so far is fine. There is a lack of challengers, but do you really want to see him lose right now? I mean, to who? Set up the right challenger. Let's get an interesting program. But right now, he's not the A story. The A story on SmackDown is the Bloodline, and then on Raw you have a bunch of A stories. You got Punk Drew, you've got Dominic and his girlfriends. The implosion of the Judgment Day, and you've got the Wyatt Six hunting. I mean, you got all this other stuff going on. Might there be a Street Profits split? I sort of hope not, but a heel Montez Ford, that would be interesting. We're probably going to see Jade turn on Bianca at some point. Somebody proposed to me maybe they'll have Bianca turn on her. Maybe. I don't think so. I mean, I know people sort of fantasize the heel power couple. That could be interesting. But I actually do think Bianca is John Cena. And also Jade, first of all, I think she's, her promos and her cadence are really good for heel stuff. And also Bianca is the better wrestler. Jade as a heel, she can work slower and more methodically, and the power game and the brutal game, and you don't have to be the great wrestler for that to be the heel. So I think it all makes sense, especially at this stage of her development. I don't know. I'm enjoying the ride, but it is a little bit. It's a little bit like a movie where you sort of know where things are going. You just don't know exactly how they're going to get there. But that's not much of a complaint. Like it's not really worth the words I actually use to say them, because it's just it's a nitpick.
Also,
that's what makes the cinema, because when you know what's going to happen, you don't know how.
I'm also gonna bring up some few wrestlers. I'm actually kind of liking Gunther being World Heavyweight Champion. I think he's going to have a good run with it. Like you said, Dominic and Rhea and Liv. But back to Gunther. Do you think it was a good, like, did they think they pulled the trigger right for him to be World Heavyweight Champion?
No, but it's not really about Gunther. I think it made Priest look really stupid. The whole thing with Seth Rollins and the whole stipulation where Seth Rollins would never challenge, and if he lost, and then Priest said, "I'm a gentleman, and you were a gentleman, so you're going to get a rematch anyway." So all of that was just garbage. It was just thrown away. It was like very AEW stupid stuff. What I thought was going to happen is that Priest would retain with Judgment Day's help, despite Priest telling them not to help him. That's what would cause the implosion the next day, and that would protect Gunther. And then he could win at Bash of Berlin or whatever. No, at Bash of Berlin, not whatever. But they didn't do that, and I think it made Priest look stupid. I think it made Seth look stupid. But they might have done the right thing, because with everything going on with Liv and Viv, Liv and Viv, my wife is Viv, Liv and Rhea and Dom, at the same time, I think Priest actually won by losing. Like, the crowd, I think, they were beginning to turn on him. Well, I don't know. I don't know what people thought of him, but he had like botches in main events, like 2 in a row, which were pretty glaring. And so it seemed like he wasn't ready for it. So like now he's really over. The crowd's really behind him. They're really behind this whole story. So I think it's okay. I just thought it was going to play out a different way. So I guess since I was wrong, I'm sort of married to my own idea. But I think it's turned out fine for Priest. But, the whole Randy Orton thing, he's on SmackDown. And, it's a great match for Berlin. Randy Orton is a main eventer anywhere in the world. He's a gigantic star. So it's a good event. You can believe he's going to win it. He's the 14th-time champion. Maybe he'll be the 15th-time champion. He said then he'll be on Raw. Terrific. So they're doing all the right things. But, it feels like they make these ideas, and then, some of them, they come from their asses and they're like, you know what, we're going to fix that mistake and make that mistake look like it was part of long-term storytelling. Like Randy Orton's shoulder was not on the mat despite him being counted out at King of the Ring or Money in the Bank, whatever it was, Elimination Chamber. So I have mixed feelings about, but no, but basically I think Cody and Gunther are sort of the same, just one's a heel and one's a face, and they're sort of both like workhorse, professional champions. And I think that's too much professionalism at the top. You need one character.
I got two more people. Do you think it was the right move for Braun Breaker to win the IC title from Sami Zayn at SummerSlam?
Yeah, got no problem with that. That was cool.
Okay. Tiffany Stratton, was that a yay or a nay for her winning the Money in the Bank?
Absolute yay. And despite the musical theater number on SmackDown opening, which was a disaster,
God.
I think Pretty Deadly with Tiffany Stratton will be comedy gold.
Okay. All right, that'll be it for our episode of Savage Wrestling Podcast. Thank you, Evil Dose, for being a great guest for me.
Thanks for having me on. Listen, I was very honored when you had a post saying that you had some dream guests, and I'm reading the list and I'm on it, and I'm like, what? How am I anyone's dream guest? So of course I'll, try to make it happen, and we were able to do so. So I thank you for both.
Thank you so much, man. Making my dreams come true for a really cool podcast episode.
Well, hopefully you don't feel like you caught the car and you're like, ugh, terrible.
Well, after that botched beginning, I was like, oh my God, he's going to hate me. This is embarrassing. I kept thinking, oh my God, that was embarrassing. I got to restart over. I got to explain to him what happened.
we all live with these ghosts in the machine and technology. And we all have these problems. I use Riverside, and half the people, they can't access Riverside. So every single person who does a podcast, has this kind of stuff, or if they spend a lot of money, make sure they don't.
He was before we go, he did mention about the list I posted on Twitter. It was just random. I was like, no, what? I'm gonna say something that I wanted to say. I said, people ask me what's my dream Super Show guest. Evil Dose was one of them. Phil Marks, Pro Wrestling Times. Kevin Apollo, Dijak, and
Well, I know two of those people, and they're terrific. I don't know Dijak, but I'm sure he'd be a great guest.
I would love to have him. I kind of want to like talk to him what really happened and when he left WWE, but
I doubt he'll tell you, but
I tried.
Oh, no, I mean he's professional, and he'll he'll just say it didn't work out. I was surprised, but he's gonna keep that door open. He's not a dummy.
If I could give real
The problem for Dijak is one, he's big, but he's small big. He's like big and he's lanky, and they already have like a bunch of like big scary bad guys on the main roster. They got Bronson Reed, they got Karrion Kross, they got AOP, they have Omos that they don't even use. I mean, they just brought in the Wyatt Six, so they've already got basically him and Spades there. So, they probably shouldn't have elevated. They probably should have left him on NXT and let him do a tag team with Josh Briggs or something, or continue to be the gatekeeper there at NXT. They could pay him, more money. He was still getting a main roster salary. I mean, they didn't need to draft him a second time. It was weird, but and I could see why he would be upset. But he's been in this business long enough, and he knows, things aren't over for him.
Well, the funny thing is, I had a special somebody tweeted at me while we were streaming. Awful wrestling comment on it. Those evil over me, I'm applied. And I messaged him, don't worry, I didn't forget about you, with a winky face.
I'm sure he meant appalled, and he should be, because awful wrestling's fantastic. They're all lit. Listen, they get 3 hours a week on Toonie Town over me. So, I mean, guys, let me have something.
Like I said, thank you for joining a nice special edition episode. Thank you, Ft.Evil, for letting me have you on here. Didn't expect to have you tonight, but thank you for showing, and thank you for making my dreams come true. I wish Aaron was here, but he has an outside work. He has a job. He has to work. He has bills to pay, and he has a mouth to feed.
I get it. I have all those things as well. All right, listen. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I hope all your other dreams come true too.
I hope it will. If you guys want to know his Twitter, follow his Twitter at what's your Twitter?
Evil Dose at Garden of Doom, or at Icarus Fell MD. And if you want to support me in any way, my podcast is Garden of Doom, and if you subscribe to that, you get two other shows too. One is called Garden Views. The other is called God Presents The Book of Black, and that's a show I co-host with PJ Black. Maybe you might remember him as Justin Gabriel in WWE. You might know him as PJ Black, because he still wrestles. And we talk to people in and around wrestling about Garden of Doom stuff. What's Garden of Doom? Comparative mythology, esoterica, cryptids, ufology, sacred knowledge, geometry, sacred geometry, alternate history, alternate archaeology, some pop culture, anything that makes me curious. Very interesting show, sort of like Joe Rogan without the attitude. And we've had so far on Book of Black, we've had Aaron Idle, who most of you probably know as Damian Sandow. We've had Super Panda. We had Tyrus, and that show will drop tomorrow. We spoke to, well, this isn't even his wrestling name, but Raider. And we have also spoken to Jimmy Jacobs, a writer for AW. So those are all recorded shows that will be dropping in the future. And we're going to get a constant stream of guests, including some big names like the ones you've heard, because everyone loves Dr. Black.
All right. That sounds like a really fun show to listen to.
It is fun, but I gotta tell you, we've had some pretty deep conversations in there. But also in some of the shows, some of it goes a little bit off the rails. I mean, Tyrus, we're talking about starting a cult with a great megalodon as the godhead. So this is. So listen, I don't talk to them about where they trained. I don't talk about their favorite wrestling moves, their finisher, who their dream matches are. Don't care about that. I mean, it's not that I don't care, but every other wrestling podcast we're talking about things that they're interested in that are outside wrestling. Wrestling creeps in a little bit. And interesting things pop out. In the show with Austin Idol, I made the mistake. I thought that NWA was moving from the CW app to CW TV in October. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. And he goes, no, we don't know if that's happening. We don't know. He's like, I'm honest. We don't know. Maybe, I hope so, but we don't know. So I guess I broke some news, at least to myself, on that. And there's other little tidbits, but you guys have to tune in to hear it. And you can find out that wrestlers have souls, and a lot of them are worried about their eternal souls too. And and 4 of the 6 people so far have been Freemasons, including PJ.
Go ahead and follow this nice man's Twitter, listen to his podcast. He's a nice guy. Reason I wanted him on the podcast because he was on PWT, and I thought he was a very interesting person to talk to. Like I said, I'm going to say it 1,000 times. Thank you for being a guest on this show. Don't forget this upcoming Friday, the interview with Willie Does Wrestling is still happening, and Saturday we're going to have a show. So see y'all later. Hope you all have a great night.
Stay able, my friends.